Hi, everyone. It's Joe Veneri, the host of Fitt Insider, the show where I talk with the entrepreneurs, executives, and investors who are redefining the business of fitness and wellness. Today, I'm joined by Nick Green, CEO of Thrive Market. In this episode, we discuss Thrive's business model that's been described as Costco meets Whole Foods, the importance of increasing access to healthy, high-quality food, how Nick was able to raise $250 million after getting turned down by countless investors, and why he says the company is just getting started. Let's get into it. A quick reminder before we get into today's show. Every Tuesday, we send a weekly newsletter filled with insights and analysis on the business of fitness and wellness. Join other decision makers and industry operators by subscribing at insider.fit.co. Hi, Nick. Welcome to Fitt Insider. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
Excited to chat today. And I think, to be honest, I think most listeners maybe have heard about Thrive Market. So for folks who don't know, can you tell us about the company, maybe how you got started and what things look like today?
Yeah, so we're a market for healthy, organic, sustainable products. When we launched, people called us Whole Foods meets Costco online. I think the headline was, if Costco and Whole Foods had a baby, it would be Thrive Market. So it's a membership model. Our members pay $60 a year. They get access to a catalog of the best healthy and organic products that you would find in a health food retailer like Whole Foods, but they're all at wholesale prices. So our mission is to make healthy living affordable and accessible to everybody. That, of course, starts with price. We try to benchmark our organic products to the price of conventional equivalents. And then we ship anywhere in the country using traditional shipping channels like FedEx and UPS. So 50% of our membership base in the Midwest and the Southeast. In fact, our biggest fulfillment centers in Batesville, Indiana. Our average household income for our members is under $100,000. So really reaching the middle class, middle American market. And it's been a 6-year crazy growth adventure for us. We got rejected by every VC we talked to back at the beginning. Nobody thought that middle class, middle America wanted to get healthy. I think we've proven that wrong. And, 6 years later, we're coming up on 1 million members and continuing to grow really fast. And, things, as you can imagine, have really accelerated over the last 6 months with the pandemic.
Yeah, and certainly there a lot there that I want to dive into and maybe unpack. But to get started, can you just talk about, you mentioned the Costco meets Whole Foods. Can you elaborate on the membership model, why it works and how that translates to the overall value proposition?
Yeah, for us, it starts with the mission. We wanted to make healthy living affordable and accessible to everybody. And affordability really is that first barrier to access. If you're on a normal income in this country, paying a 30 to 50% premium for organic, natural, healthy, sustainable products just isn't really part of your daily living equation. And Whole Foods did an amazing job of building a 500 store network, a $15 billion business before they were sold to Amazon. But really, they were only targeting that top 5% of income earners. So we asked ourselves, how can we actually get to a place where natural, healthy products are as affordable as these highly processed food-like substances that most people are consuming as the staples of their diet. And we iterated through a few different business models. We originally thought about doing a kind of Groupon model where we pooled people together, bought in mass quantities, and then shipped them out. But that was really tough for recurring products that people are buying on grocery, and knowing that the average number of items that people are buying in grocery is really, really large. So we shifted away from that model. That was like an early pilot that we did back in 2014, and ultimately found the Costco model through need, right, of figuring out what will make it affordable. And with the Costco model, the benefit is we can make our money on the membership. We don't have to make it on the product sales. And it turns out that wholesale price basically gives you a discount that's about the same as the premium that's paid for organic food. So by doing the wholesale pricing, we were able to actually hit that target of organic, natural products at the price of conventional. And then we looked, we did other things as well. We curated the catalog, which is frankly kind of also out of the Costco playbook, where we are concentrating our volume on a smaller number of SKUs from a more limited set of brands that we can go really deep with. And then we cut out steps in the supply chain. That's happened over time, even more so now as we've shifted to our own brand, the Thrive Market brand. That's about a third of our sales. So we've layered additional things beyond membership, but membership was that sort of big step function, transformative pillar to the business model that allowed us to actually make good on that, healthy products made affordable.
Sure. And you mentioned there, and I think it was really interesting, kind of doing some research initially, the idea of, and the name really of Shop Tribe, as you were working through these different iterations and now thinking about what Thrive Market is in its current form. How did that original vision and mission change and evolve? And now looking back, how were you able to stick to it going through those different iterations?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm surprised you're able to even find the name Shop Tribe out there. We've done our best to cover up that stage in the business. We did iterate a lot. Like I said, we started with the mission and started with the problem of, why is it that eating healthy organic food is so difficult and so expensive? This was back in 2014, kind of in, I wouldn't say the nascent stages of the sort of natural organic movement, but certainly the nascent stages of it starting to go mainstream. And I think what we recognized is that people wanted to access the lifestyle, but they weren't able to from an affordability standpoint. And so, we really believed that demand was there. We truly believed that it was important to solve this problem. You look at the number of lifestyle diseases that afflict people in this country. And you look at how fundamental health is to anything else that people are going to do, whether it's to individual economic outcomes, or social level and country level economic and social outcomes. Just things don't work when people aren't able to be healthy. And in this country, for the last 50 to 75 years, Xing out the extraordinary measures that our healthcare system goes to keep people alive who aren't so healthy, we have seen a deterioration in health. And so for us, and it was a long answer to your question, but the everything started with just being really clear about that being a massive problem, about the need to solve it, and about the belief that people wanted to get their improve their lifestyles. And that gave us the conviction to go through all those iterations. And, we didn't get it right. Like, we didn't get the name right. We didn't get the business model right initially. We made all sorts of problems initially just developing even the technological platform. We have made more mistakes in this business than, and all my co-founders and I are serial entrepreneurs. I would say we've made more mistakes in this business than every other business that we did combined, because it is a hard problem to solve. But again, the conviction and the mission has been the North Star for us since day one. And it's given us the ability to be flexible and agnostic and humble about anything else. It's like, change the name, sure, we can do that. Shift the business model, yep, we can do that too. Whatever we need to do to get to that mission. And I think kind of ironically, I think consistency on the mission has made us sort of ultimately flexible on everything else.
I think it's really important, and I definitely want to touch on that broader vision and mission piece. But you mentioned, maybe one of the hurdles going through the process was getting turned down by venture capitalists. I think, the number I read was anywhere between 20 and 50, but the way you say it is just like everybody that we talk to. And that being around like, how many people can afford to do this? How many people want to do this? This being eat healthier and buy these types of foods. Ultimately, that brings you to this, I guess, opportunity, happy accident that you bring on influencer investors who are really just interested and passionate about eating healthy. Can you talk about how that transformed maybe the business and whether or not it was a strategic decision or something you had to do out of necessity?
Yeah, the first thing I'll say is it's been actually a theme through the entirety of this business, and really, frankly, for my entrepreneurial career, of like greatest failures turn into greatest successes, or open the door to greatest successes. And this was like the best case in point for that, certainly in the history of Thrive, and probably for me personally in my entire life. Like, we went out to, it was at least 50. It was probably more than 150, to be completely honest. Just like, to your point, every venture capitalist that we could meet, every angel investor that we could meet. We would talk to anyone, and by the end, we would have taken money from literally anyone that would give us anything. And every investor, kind of poked the same holes in the business model, had the same questions, the same reservations. Everyone took a wait and see attitude. And ultimately, the turning point for us was turning to people that actually shared the mission, that weren't looking at it just as a financial investment. And so, we went to the thought leaders, to the content creators, to the influencers, and in many cases, kind of micro influencers that were out there with blogs and with big email lists selling their own products in the health and wellness space. Or at that point, not as much, but certainly over time, influencers on Instagram and social media. And initially, we were just talking to them about partnering for promotion. Gunnar and I, my co-founder and I, actually self-funded the business for the first year, and definitely drained our personal cash reserves and said, all right, like we've got enough conviction, we'll keep doing that. And meanwhile, we'll turn to these influencers to really make sure that we can turbocharge the growth when we do launch. And they started pitching us on, well, can we get more involved? And one thing led to another. We got a few of those early influencers in as investors and advisors. They told their friends who told their friends, and it was like the dominoes started to fall. So we took our first $8.5 million, basically in like $25,000 to $50,000 chunks, from well over 100 of these influencer investors, and it truly transformed the business. I mean, we didn't recognize it at the time because we hadn't launched yet, but when we ultimately did launch, like literally, it was our only channel for the first 4 to 5 months of the business. We were able to build towards a high seven-figure annual run rate only on the influencers. And it was pretty interesting because we went from not being able to raise money on a very low convertible note, cap convertible note from all these investors, to having those same investors coming back to us 9 months later when we were doing tens of millions of dollars in sales run rate, and willing to pay 2 orders of magnitude more to buy into the business. So have a lot of gratitude for those influencers, and many of them are still deeply involved in the business today. We truly would not exist but for their efforts and their confidence in the business.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear and really interesting. One question I had tying that to, you mentioned, the idea around increasing access and potentially VCs being concerned with like, hey, this isn't going to get to quote unquote middle America. And now you saying a significant portion of the customers, in fact, do come from maybe not large urban cities that you would think of as wanting to live this lifestyle. Do you attribute that to maybe some of these influencers who they're from those areas, can get to people and impact them, versus the marketing and acquisition, or is it a combination of both?
It is both. The influencers definitely seeded it, and they proved out the original thesis. And, that's also the reason why they invested, because a lot of them are themselves come either in the middle of the country or come from those backgrounds. Their audiences are like, they knew firsthand the problem and understood firsthand through their listeners or their viewers or their readers, that this was a real thing and that the demand was there and that there was no good solution. Contrast that to a VC who's got their office in downtown San Francisco, has plenty of disposable income themselves, maybe doesn't even do their own grocery shopping. And, there's a Whole Foods in every corner kind of situation. And that is why the VCs didn't get it. That's why the influencers did. And, what was amazing is as soon as they started promoting, we just saw things take off. And, the same way that the influencers told other influencers who, and then funded the business, once the influencers told their audiences, their listeners or their viewers or their readers would tell their friends who told their friends, and it was word of mouth. And, to this day, 6 years later, doing, hundreds of millions of dollars in sales with nearly 1 million members, we still see that word of mouth as the primary driver of sign up for membership. And, nearly half of our traffic is still coming in completely organically for new users, and even higher than that on the existing member base. So it really has been a organic phenomenon in that sense of the word too. And then what we've done is we've used our marketing engine to just turbocharge that. So, we are mission driven, and those are our real values. And so we've focused on how do we use marketing in a way that is not marketing, but is just storytelling and conversations and content about what we do and what we're about. So, we've used social channels and kind of what I would call kind of upper funnel digital channels as our strongest marketing strategy. We had a period in the business where we tried to venture into more kind of lower funnel channels, Google search and all of that. You can get some volume there, but you just don't get the same quality of customers. And for us, with our membership model, both the business, in order to succeed, needs people to be getting value and renewing and coming back year after year after year. And then also for our mission to succeed, that has to be the case. So, that has continued to inform the type of marketing that we do and the places where we spend our dollars. And in turn, that marketing engine has really supported the organic growth engine and the influencer promotion, and created a pretty cool flywheel.
Yeah, and digging into that a little bit more, you mentioned the organic, the word of mouth, also having used basically all the channels at this point. But is there something that's disproportionately performing well for you now that you've been surprised by, or that you continue to come back to?
I don't know if I'd say surprised by. Like, we have a pretty good idea of the types of channels that will work well for us. And again, it goes back to being able to authentically talk about what we do and what we stand for, and really present like the value of membership. So, again, to set the contrast for what doesn't work as well for us, like putting a Google, product listing ad up, or a paid search ad, where someone is clicking in to buy a single product and coming in and then learns about Thrive and the membership. Like, that works sometimes, but we would rather engage with people where they actually are interested in the broad value proposition of Thrive. So, podcast is actually, interestingly, a channel that we've started to do more of. We've thought about different types of influencers. So, while early on, we were focused a lot on like bloggers, and I mentioned kind of health email marketers. The landscape has shifted really dramatically, and now it's Instagram. We're even seeing a little bit on TikTok now with some of those audiences get larger. But for us, it's less about like, any specific channel per se, and more like what's the profile, what does that channel look like? And for the most part, we know what the kinds of channels are that can be successful, and at this point, we know the channels that aren't. And if it doesn't allow us to tell our story, to engage authentically with users, and to stay big picture, it's not the right channel for us usually.
Sure. One thing I wanted to touch on as well, obviously recording this, still ongoing lockdowns, opening, closures related to COVID, with health being such an important piece of this. And then specifically to Thrive Market, like needing to get food in a way that is not just being able to have the option sometimes to go to the grocery store. So really putting the delivery and the health and the curation aspect of it at the forefront. How has the pandemic impacted the business, and what are you seeing as a result?
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge question, and obviously been very front of our mind for the last 6 months. And I would say it's essentially accelerated the two like mega secular trends that we've bet on, in that it's accelerated shift of grocery shopping online, obviously. And then maybe less obviously, I think it's accelerated the movement towards, for lack of a better word, conscious consumption. And that is both people wanting to get healthy for themselves and their family. I'd like to say that when COVID hit, like everybody became a conscious consumer, and that they're thinking about their health, they're thinking about safety. But it's also broader than that. I think it's people being aware, amidst a pandemic, of like the social costs of that and the human costs of that, and people wanting to be part of the solution. And to me, that's actually like that conscious consumer movement is the most exciting thing happening in like any consumer space in general. And I think it transcends a lot of different categories. And it's been building for a while, where people are not just thinking about what's in it for me, but also, how does my consumption affect the environment? How does it affect the people that create these products? And really wanting to vote with their dollars, so to speak. And I think that accelerated dramatically during COVID. I mean, we saw it firsthand with our members wanting to just contribute to the shopping budgets of those less fortunate. We have a donate at checkout feature that allows our members to donate a portion of their savings on every order that goes to the shopping budgets of Gives members. So we give away a free membership for every paid member on the site. We allow those donations to go towards funding the actual shopping spend of those Gives members. We saw the donation rate literally spike 9 X when COVID hit. So I think it's predictable that people would focus on their own health and safety, but maybe less predictable, but very encouraging and heartening that they also are thinking about the health and safety of others. And I think even more broadly that like the health and the future of the planet. So I think COVID has accelerated the two trends that we're betting on. COVID has also just been like in a very direct, immediate way, this incredible moment for our mission where we had to step up. And to your point, at a time when millions of Americans all of a sudden don't want to go to the grocery store, in some cases can't go to the grocery store, how are they going to get their essentials or their staples? So, we had to hire, literally 450 people in our fulfillment centers. We basically doubled our output in the fulfillment centers over the course of about 5 weeks. We were having to bring in more inventory in a matter of months than we would bring in a typical year. There's definitely some real insanity to do that. But, again, like I was saying earlier, because we were so focused on the mission, it, kind of created the forcing function for us to be really flexible, really adaptable, and really responsive. But it's certainly been a wild ride. It's obviously not over. And I think what we're going to see coming out of it, even as things quote unquote normalize, is that those secular trends that I was describing earlier, conscious consumption and grocery shopping online, really shopping online in general, are going to remain elevated. And it's sort of like we've skipped years of development where online grocery has basically gone from 2020 or 2019 to 2025 and skipped the 5 years intervening.
Absolutely. I agree. And I think there's so many interesting things to think about as that evolution takes place. Basically thinking about it as accelerating these underlying trends. Ultimately, you're building in this direction anyway, and now you're just going to get there faster. And we see this across, for the sake of the Fitt Insider audience, connected fitness, telemedicine, mental health, just overall aspects of well-being. One of the reasons I was excited to have you on was because typically in this conversation, we talk so much about fitness and wellness, but nutrition is kind of at the center and really, if you want to think about it, at the foundation of those things. But access to healthy, high quality foods gets left out of the conversation or almost ignored. So how do you think about, obviously Thrive Market, you're doing your part to make it accessible and want more and more members to take advantage of this, but inserting this conversation around nutrition, avoiding highly processed foods, that as it relates to obesity and other health issues, like how do we do this in a way that contributes to that overall conversation and has a larger impact?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And there's so many kind of, I describe as like micro conversations happening. There's even within nutrition, there's all these different health niches, whether it's new diets like keto and low FODMAP, or it's trends in plant-based eating, and then as you get out into fitness, you've got like all sorts of interesting things happening, and people that are very rigorous and analytical and quantified in the way that they're approaching trends. And I think that stuff is all really, really interesting. I personally find it really appealing, but I call them micro conversations because each of them sort of appeals to a microcosm, to a niche. And part of what we want to do is provide the platform where no matter what health means to you, no matter what values you want to support, you can find them. And we do that by tagging every product on the site by 140 different metadata categories. So, if you are low FODMAP because you've got some food allergies, you click a button. If you have a kid that has a nut allergy, or a dairy sensitivity, click, and everything will filter down. If you want to explore the keto diet, you can do that. But then to your point, we also really are focused on beyond empowering people to live their micro specific niche healthy lifestyle. How do we create this foundation of just of goodness? And what does that mean? And, one thing that we put a flag in the ground on has been non-GMO, right? Genetic modification of crops in the United States is overwhelmingly to enable them to support toxic levels of Roundup, of glyphosate, which is a chemical that's a known carcinogen. We've decided we don't have anything inherently against genetically modifying an organism. This isn't like a religious argument against playing God, But we do have a problem with engineering plants to withstand orders of magnitude more toxic chemicals that we know cause cancer in humans. And so that's something where we've just said we're not going to carry any foods that have known GMOs. And it's been a really challenging dimension of our business to control that in our supply chain. But yeah, one that is so eminently worth it because it gives that like foundational common principle. Other things that we've really focused on are sugar reduction, even just ingredient reduction in general. So you look at in a normal CPG product, you're going to see 2/3 of the ingredients are things that you've never heard of, that you maybe can't even pronounce, and really focusing in on whole food products. And then within even cleaning and beauty, products that you don't put in your body, but are going on and around your body, how do we make those non-toxic and clean and more simplified and use plant-based or other organic ingredients. And so, what that means is a little bit different in different categories, but by applying like big, broad standards on sort of common principles that we can all agree on, I think that's like to me, that's the 80-20 of like, if you come on Thrive, everything meets a certain quality of health to where, you don't have to worry about it, broadly speaking, and then you can optimize from beyond there. But I think if all we accomplished was, enabling people to get an 80-20 of less processed food, more simple, better for the environment, because better for the environment is usually better for human bodies too. And more organic, less processed, like that would be a massive win. And then, let everybody also become passionate about their kind of micro health trends beyond that.
Yeah, there's so many elements in there that are really interesting. One being, the quality control aspect, but also the curation aspect, so that when you look at all of the other options folks might have, well, they know when they go to Thrive Market, like they can search by, potential allergies or dietary restrictions or lifestyle choices, which I think separates, obviously this, but continues to separate Thrive Market from competitors. I think another thing that's been interesting in looking at both the Costco model and maybe even something like Amazon Basics has been the creation of the private label products. Can you talk about how that's factored into the strategy and if there's an opportunity or if you're thinking about it, will you start to sell these Thrive Market products in brick and mortar?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I first want to address the point that you made, which is also a really important one around curation. And like those standards that I was referring to before, and there's a lot of others, are what we use as our criteria for curation. And you mentioned Amazon a second ago. Like we think about ourselves in some ways as the un-Amazon. I wouldn't say anti-Amazon because Amazon's good for what it is, and they're trying to build the everything store. But we sort of want to build something that is the almost the opposite in that we don't want to have 150 or in case of Amazon, I think it was like 40,000 almond butter results if you search for almond butter. We want to have the half a dozen that are the best from the top brands that are most trusted with the highest quality ingredients. So that curation for us, there are other categories where I think selection is really important. I think when people are trying to get healthy, selection can be overwhelming. It can actually be a reason not to start. It can be just a choice overload situation. So curation is really, really key to our model. And to tie it to your question about private label, for us, private label has been an extension of that curation, where we've said, all right, how can we even go deeper to make the products that actually hit the exact quality standards that we want? So, we've turned the private label model on its head in that we're very rarely doing just compare to or me too products. I would say the Amazon Basics model is a little bit more of that, where they're going to say, okay, let's use our scale and cut out steps of the supply chain so that we can offer batteries at a lower price, but it's the same battery, right? For us, we are focused on health, and we use R&D, and we use the data from third-party product sales, as well as what our members tell us quantitatively and qualitatively, to actually inform a pipeline of products that are in every single situation meaningfully up-leveling some quality dimension. So whether that's removing additional ingredients, or it's creating a line of cleaners that are all EWG A-level certified, or is going up the supply chain and doing fair trade in really unique ways, or is pushing beyond organic into regenerative agriculture, as we've done now on a number of our food lines. That's what we want to do with private label. And we've grown it really fast. Like we have over 700 private label products today. It's doing nearly a third of our sales. And it's going to continue going up from there. I like to say we're now not just Whole Foods meets Costco, but Whole Foods meets Costco meets Trader Joe's in that sense. So yeah, I do see that being a huge, huge opportunity for growth. I don't know whether we'll actually take it into retail. We're more interested in building the value to the Thrive Market platform. And again, for us, the big value of a private label is that it is that even further curated selection of products that will have even stronger levels of trust with our members, where as they get to know the standards and innovation that we apply to private label, they look for the Thrive Market brand as like, oh, if it's got the Thrive Market brand, it's going to be amazing. And we've been really, I was going to say fortunate, but it's been very deliberate. But we've gotten to a place where that truly is the case. Like our members have higher reorder rates on private label than any other brand on site. We see in every category where we launch the Thrive Market brand, it almost immediately becomes the best seller. And so, that data-driven approach that is focused on innovation, focused on up-leveling, like I said, kind of turning the traditional model on its head has been super successful for us. And, whether we take it into other channels or just continue to do it through Thrive, it is going to be, one of, if not kind of the pillar of the business going forward.
It's such an interesting point. And I think one aspect of that kind of speaks to the broader platform is what you said around this being the standard in some ways. Like we're curating it, but also our products meet this bar. So how does that translate to the other products and brands that you bring onto the platform, like how you're evaluating them and maybe how easy or difficult it is for some other brand to get onto Thrive Market?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. For any of those CEOs out there from brands that would like to be on Thrive, like it's really hard, and we reject a lot of brands that are good brands in a lot of ways. But if they're not doing something differentiated, I think we're increasingly kind of holding them to the same standard that we do with our own brand, which is what are they doing to improve? What are they doing to build off of what's already been done? How are they really innovating? And again, whether that is in the supply chain and sourcing, whether that's in the formulation and taste, or whether it's in in some cases the design or the brand, or even the packaging if they're moving into more sustainable packaging or form factors. I mean, there are so many different vectors that innovation can happen on. But what we don't want to have on Thrive Market is products and brands that are commoditized. And I think, what we've seen in the last 10 years, there's been a lot of innovation, but there's also been a lot of copycat, a lot of brands that just jump on the bandwagon and copy a trend. And, we definitely want to have the on-trend products, but if we're going to do that, we're not going to have, a bazillion on-trend products. We're going to pick the one that's doing the trend in the right way and that we think will really have staying power. And so, what that means is it's hard to get on Thrive. For every brand that we accept, we reject 100 plus. But it also means that we go deep with the brands that are on Thrive. And, the same way I was describing the storytelling and the authenticity that's so important for Thrive when we are acquiring members, we look at every single brand through that same lens of can we tell their story and be proud that they're on Thrive? Can we talk transparently about what they do and how they do it, and where they come from in a way that's going to be accretive to the trust and credibility that we're trying to build with our members. And, online, you can do so much more with content than you can in a brick and mortar environment. So we have an opportunity to tell those stories. We want to make sure the brands that we bring on really have those stories to tell. So we've been really fortunate to work with just some incredible brands. During the pandemic, knowing how focused we are on accessing people that may not otherwise have the access, the brands have really stepped up, even as their supply chains have been stretched and squeezed. And because we have fewer brands, we can give them more attention and I think be a better partner to them. But similarly, because we have fewer brands, we're more reliant on the brands that we have, and they've just been absolutely amazing. And the last thing I would say there too is not only do we hold them to a ever increasing standard, but we also make sure that in what we do on our own brand, that it's not undermining the brands on site. So I think one of the things I'm most proud of actually with our Thrive Market brand program is that by virtue of bringing more sales to the category, we typically will see sales for the other brands in the category go up when we do that. Now, the caveat to that is we do SKU rationalize when we bring our own brand in place. So if we had 4 ketchups before and then we launched Thrive Market Ketchup, we might cut the 2 that are a little bit more commodified. But for the brand that's remaining, that really does have the brand loyalty or the innovation or the uniqueness, they'll typically see their sales go up. So that's the thing we're very committed to. And we're a B Corp. We're obviously a mission-driven business. I think of us as a stakeholder-driven business as well, which means that we are not just going to do what's right for our bottom line at this exact moment. We actually want to build something and believe in the power of an ecosystem where our members win, our brands win, and Thrive wins.
Yeah, great points there. And kind of changing gears a little bit as we look to wrap up. I mean, to this point, and you correct me if I'm wrong, the number that I was able to find is, Thrive has raised some $250 million to date. And looking into the future, how do you think about where you're taking the company, whether that's staying private, exploring strategic options, maybe going public, or even something else?
That's a great question. I'd say 2 things. One is we're just getting started. There's 350 million Americans, 100 million American households. We have just about 1 million members. So we are barely scratching the surface of the mass of people that either want to get healthy or soon will want to get healthy and don't have another great option. We really, really believe that the opportunity is larger than ever. And we've obviously gotten to some real scale and had some real success, but we're just barely getting started from both a business standpoint and solve the problem mission standpoint. And then the second thing I would say, and I'm going to sound like a broken record, but it just goes back to what I said at the beginning, which was the flexibility. I'm agnostic on whether we are a public company or a private company. I'm a little less agnostic on whether we're part of another company versus on our own, because I value the control and the nimbleness that being independent allows for us. But I wouldn't put anything off the table simply because of what it is. I wouldn't say like we have to be a public company or we have to get acquired by a strategic. For us, it really is about how do we achieve the mission and thinking about it on a really long timeline. Like I think that's one of our most significant competitive advantages today. We have raised a lot of money, but we've raised it from long-term investors. We haven't raised an outside round since 2016, our Series B. That's given us the ability to be very long-term oriented and stay very focused and be heads down in the business. That's the reason why our renewal rates are best in class. It's the reason why we're coming up on profitability, even while we continue to grow really quickly. I think those things could make us a very strong public company. And that's definitely a path that we've started to consider as we're getting closer to kind of that stage in the business. But if and when we do that, it's going to be a stepping stone to the next stage. And we think we can build a massive business. We think we can actually achieve the mission. And the comparison I like to put is to Whole Foods, which over the course of 20 years, they said built 500 plus locations in a $13 or $14 billion business. And they were only accessible to 5% of Americans based on income and maybe 50% of people based on being within driving distance. We look at where we're at, being able to ship to anyone in the country, being at pricing that's accessible to the majority of American families, and thinking on that same kind of timetable of 20 plus years, we think we can build a much, much bigger business and one that really does make good on that mission to make healthy living fully affordable, fully accessible.
Yeah, to your point, certainly a lot of folks that can use this and need it in their lives, and an incredible mission as you continue to work towards it. But as we look to wrap up, we'll actually get you out of here on this. Where can folks find you on the internet and learn more about Thrive Market?
Yeah, go to thrivemarket.com. You take an onboarding quiz that'll personalize the entire site to you. You can sign up for an annual membership, or if you want to just try it, do a monthly. Even if you do an annual, you actually can, it's fully refundable for the first 30 days. So you can try it risk-free. And our typical member makes back their membership fee in savings from 2 orders. So nothing to lose and a lot to gain. We encourage anyone to get out there and be part of the movement.
Awesome. Yeah, and we'll encourage folks to definitely check it out. Nick, I appreciate you joining us today, and I'm really excited to share this conversation.
Thanks so much.
Thanks everyone for listening to today's episode. For more from Fitt Insider, visit insider.fit.co and subscribe to our weekly newsletter for insights and analysis on the business of fitness and wellness. Then, go ahead and subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. See you next time.